This is a Hot Pie Media original.
Fasten your seatbelts.
JeffWardShow.com. 6 minutes of football.
That is to the end zone. Touchdown, Texas.
To get off the field on defense on third down, and then to extend drives on third down on offense that ultimately led to scoring drives.
Here comes pressure off the edge. It's Von Bell. He gets rid of it downfield. And he did it! He did it! He did it! Kenny Stills! Welcome to the Texans! What drop!
The competition right there just makes everybody better, and those guys got a lot of work.
Pressure coming, gets a block, goes stands in. Wide open, C.D. Lamb! Touchdown!
It's a great game. We talked about it some in the team meeting today. Just how fortunate we all are to be part of it on whatever level. Most importantly, the players. I mean, the opportunity to play in front of a stadium that's there to cheer the competition. Regardless of what side of the sideline you're on.
Let's go.
Well, of course, I couldn't let it go. It is 6 minutes of football that's, who knows if it's really 6 minutes. And yes, there's a Bishop Sycamore reference, and yes, it's probably appropriate. It's a good thing that Texas is in the Big 12. That is your local professional college football team, because based on Saturday night, they may want to stay there. An Arkansas program that has gone, added up, 2-10, 2-10, and 3-7 in the last 3 years, beat Texas far worse than 40-21. It wasn't that close. It was an embarrassment for Texas. They had no answer. They had no excuse because they had no chance. It was that bad. In fact, Texas all but tried to tap out early in the third quarter when it became painfully obvious that there was no answer after getting slapped in the first half, 228-78 in yardage. So in boxing terms, since it's the theme of the day, in boxing terms, it was a knockout by halftime. They really tried to tap out. They should have tapped out. They were Bishop Sycamore, and player safety was at risk. There, I said it. So Texas now, besides all the SEC jokes, which are easy to tell at this point, Texas had better slow down on cashing those SEC checks, because the bottom of the SEC table just showed them how they're a long way away from even the middle of the pack in that league. Nobody, and think in these terms, nobody would put Texas right now higher than 8th in the SEC. They might be even worse than that, but you certainly wouldn't put them in the top 8. This is an Arkansas program that, now think about this, they had not led, that's not led a team, a ranked team, by more than 16 points since 2016. They hadn't led a ranked team by any number of points since 2016, and they lost that game. In other words, they've been bad for quite some time. They haven't been able to beat anybody any good. They haven't even been able to get a lead on anybody that's any good. So there'll be all sorts of analysis. It'll get ridiculous. There's probably going to be a ton of analysis. Then it'll turn into excuses. And let me just give it to you straight, if I can do this. Football is not a complicated game. That game between Arkansas and Texas should tell you that it's not a complicated game. It's a very simple game. The simple game, and the way it always works in football, is a game of one-on-one matchups all over the field. That's the way you have to look at it. Don't watch the ball. I learned this a long time ago growing up on a sideline with my dad refereeing NFL games, and that is, he used to tell me, don't watch the ball all the time. John McClellan is the co-founder and creator of ATX Hot Sauce in all 50 states, now in several retail outlets as well. So we're going to turn it over to the social media rock chef superstar, and we're going to walk through a few sauces and why you should buy. We've done beet heat, so we're second in line now for the tasting. Don't forget, everyone, go to atxhotsauce.com. So here we go.
All right, so this one is our smoked habanero 5-pepper. We smoke habaneros with ancho, pasilla.
Is that going to hurt?
This one? No,
Yeah.
This one's actually really, really good.
Okay.
This is like your traditional tapatilla, but without the vinegar in it, right? And because of that fermentation process that we've talked about all the time. This one is great on sandwiches, pizzas, things like that. Great on hot wings. I think you're going to really like this one too, especially the smoky flavor with the adobe chipotle and the smoked habaneros. We actually smoked the habaneros before we...
Does that go with the cab?
This would not go with the cab. This would go with the great Chenin Blanc, though.
I teed you up with that one.
Yeah.
That is good.
That's good. Isn't that good? It's just classic take. Well, it's a new take on a classic item. It's called smoked habanero 5-pepper.
All right, don't forget
One of my
ATX.
favorites.
Don't forget atxhotsauce.com. So if you just go back to the Texas-Arkansas game and not watch the ball, it won't be hard to figure out because one side was clearly better than the other. When the guy across from you can shove you backwards, you have no answer. There's the game. It really is that simple. On both sides of the ball, Texas's offensive and defensive lines were shoved around. Arkansas, and they all but did it. Arkansas could point where they're going to run, and Texas could do nothing to stop it. Arkansas even would rush with only 3 men, and still those 3 would beat the entire Texas offensive line repeatedly. So there's no, I know people are going to try to do this. Don't let yourself get into this space. There is no play call that works when the other guy across from you owns you physically. You can't make up plays to stop that. I think the scoreboard didn't even tell the story of how badly Texas was outclassed and embarrassed. This was no fluke. It was a straight up, you can't play with me beatdown all across the board. Now, if you want to be optimistic about it, you want to find a way to move on, that's cool too, because I think the butt kicking will fade. Because now it's going to fade. It's going to fade pretty quickly, I think. Texas will get to play light competition against styles like theirs in a league that I would say is a flag football league known as the Big 12. That's the way the Big 12 works. So before long, you watch this, Texas will light up the scoreboard. They'll do it over the next several games. Everyone will find a way at some point to spin the Texas loss at Arkansas. Sooner or later, it's going to be about something else. It's going to be some strategic argument, which it won't be. But build up enough wins, they will. Score enough points, they will. And that thing will be gone. It'll be it'll fade away. In fact, I would predict that Texas will move back up into the polls and probably continue to move up in the polls because that's what 75 years of street cred does for you. The bigger picture, if you want it, but the bigger picture is this. Going forward, since Texas is going to the SEC, since it is clear that they are completely outclassed in that league, they have no answer for the bottom of that league. So the bigger question and the more fascinating part is this. The Arkansas team that embarrassed Texas is built the way it is because it had no choice in that league. The same argument can be made for Texas. I mean, Texas plays a style of flag football, finesse game, because that's what the Big 12 does. So they're both built for the league they're in. And Texas got a lesson that you're not built for this league. You've got no chance in this league. So going forward, how do you fix that, right? The makeover isn't going to be that easy because you're trying to make yourself over. If you're Texas looking years down the road, they've got all they needed to learn. They got that. They're light years away from physically being able to play in that league. So what do you do about it in the meantime? Because the Big 12 is an incestuous style. It's flag football. It goes sideways. It's not very direct. It's certainly not physical like the SEC. You saw that. It's not rocket science. But you're also a byproduct of high school football in the state of Texas. And if you go to any high school football game, it looks like that. They throw it all around. It looks like a flag football game. So how does a team in a league that's only about throwing and catching, in a program, Texas, that is recruiting players in a state that is a year-round game of throwing and catching, how does that program, in this case the Texas program, reinvent itself on the fly, honestly, to prepare for the SEC when it's really playing a completely different game and a completely different brand of football every single week?
From the Hot Pie Media Studios in Austin, Texas, it's the Jeff Ward Show. Listen at jeffwardshow.com.